Record. All right. So again, our main ideas today are we're going to use broadcast messages to coordinate behavior between many sprites, many being more than one. We're going to use broadcast messages to implement procedures, as we're going to see in the next example. And then we're going to use the build your own block feature to create procedures, which in some languages might be called functions or methods, depending on the language you're working in. And this is what is called structured programming. Okay. All right. So as we play around with this and you read the stuff in the book, you're eventually going to answer the question. Think about the difference between a broadcast message with and without a wait. What's the difference between the two? And there's a couple of examples in the book to help you figure that out. Why do named blocks allow inputs? Okay, I kind of answered that question a few minutes ago. Can you think of a situation where you might want a named block to have an output value? Okay, so right now, the way Scratch blocks work is you can feed in information to it, and then they do stuff, but they don't give any information out. Okay, like I'm done, or after I did that, my favorite number is 20, right? They don't do that. Might that be a useful thing to have? And some programming languages do have that feature. Most do, actually. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to jump in and start. Maybe we should start this folder and file. Let's get that done right now. So if you haven't already, in your Google Drive, log back in. Log back in. All right. Thank you, Google, for signing me out occasionally. Don't forget to have good passwords and change them occasionally. All right, get in your CS160 folder. In your CS160 folder, you're going to have a new folder for chapter 4, if you haven't already made it. And now in chapter 4, let's get an extra capital H. That's okay. We'll deal with that later. We want to add a new Google Doc, and we're going to call that Google Doc Chapter 4 Practice. I think that's what I wanted to call it. Yep. Chapter 4 practice. With or without spaces, it's okay. And usually I like to type the title at the top and then click Untitled, and Google will grab the first thing I typed and stick it in there as the title. Kill two birds with one stone. And then after that, I'm going to paste some stuff in. And really all I'm going to paste now are the questions. I'm not going to worry about the other stuff yet. I'll deal with that later. Okay, and remember how to use a numbered list that you throw in like that. And if yours doesn't paste in right, so let's suppose something went wrong when you did that, alternative to what I just did would be to copy this here. And when you copy stuff off, like something like a web page, you want to be careful to not copy too much. So I'm going from the end of the last character to the beginning of the first character, copy it. If you don't like the way it pasted in, what you can do is right click and paste without formatting, which is Control-Shift-V on the keyboard. And then you could go back and click on it and make it a numbered list. In this case, I want to highlight all of it, except the title, make it a numbered list. Now, what's the difference between the two? That was actually part of question 1 there. So to fix that the way I did it now, if you paste it in the other way, you don't have this problem. I'm going to go to the end of the first line and delete to bring that up. And then I'm going to hit Shift-Enter to give it a new line without a number. Remember, Shift-Enter gives new lines without numbers. And then what I want is answers under these questions. We want to look professional. So I'm going to hit Shift-Enter a couple of times to give myself space to answer. I'm going to go to this one. At the end, Shift-Enter a few times to answer. And then Shift-Enter here at least once to put your answer in. Okay, we'll add to this in just a little bit. All right, and again, anyone has a question, if I go over anything too fast, say, whoa, I got a question. The actual pause for questions. Okay, onward and upward. So what I want to do next is get the flowers to script. And this is going on in pages 75 and 76 in the book. So get your book out too to see that. And I'm going to walk you through that. have my book here. And I'm going to open up that script, which I actually already have open somewhere in my stuff. Oh, warning. Several people, when I was grading the chapter 1-2 stuff, overwrote one script with another accidentally. So like you said, here's my Pong game, and up pops instead your game from chapter 3, or up pops instead the catching apples, something like that. And remember, I said I've done that before. It sucks when that happens. So I just sent you a little note. Oops, you overwrote a file. So if that happened to you, feel free to resubmit to me to get that credit back if I took off any points on that. But here's something that would be really bad. I'm very proud of my dancing on stage here with those new procedures. If I were to go right now and go to file, load from my computer and go grab flowers, what's going to happen? Dan's dancing will become flowers instead, but it'll be called Dan's dancing, and my Dan's dancing code is now gone. It's now the flowers code instead. Okay. So whenever you're loading something from the computer, don't do it with an important script in front of you. Get a new script and then upload from your computer. Otherwise, you just overwrote what you were working on. Yes, question?
I don't know if every computer does this, but
Yeah.
it gives you a warning.
It does warn you, but I don't know about you. I'm a master at ignoring those warnings or not reading them carefully. It's like, oh yeah, I get that. I was like, oh no, it meant the opposite of what I thought. Shit. Okay, so. Oh yeah. Or I start to read it, but my finger clicks. Like, damn you, why did you do that? Yeah, so it happens. So here's the bottom line though. Anytime you load a script from your computer, always start with a blank script, untitled, then load it up. So I'm going to go, so here I would go to load from my computer and I'm going to grab flowers 2. Now I'm not going to do that because I already have it in my collection of scripts. So I'm going to go see my stuff and find it. But otherwise, you're going to go load it from your stuff. Let's see, I just had it up recently. Merge go flowers. There you are. See inside. So when you load flowers, it's going to look like this. I'm pretty sure I have not edited this yet. All right. So what I want you to do here is just run the script and see what happens. Let's see. Oh, maybe it's not ready to run. I guess we got to load some code in here. Oh yeah, we're not ready. Okay. So I said go to page 75 in the book. I'm not going to show it on the screen here. I'm hoping that you can open your book and look at page 75. Did anyone forget their book today? Oh, there it goes. Where? Let's see.
You know, that's not what's in the code, but like.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't see that in the code, but okay, so that's what it does right there. So now I'm jumping over to page 75 in the book. And page 75 in the book says building your own block. We're going to make a draw flower block to go with. Right now, let's blow this up just a teensy bit. I have a receive draw flower broadcast message result there. Okay. So we're going to change that into a procedure instead. So we got that downloaded. We're going to make a block called draw flower, and then we're going to define draw flower. So let's do it. So under my blocks. So this is a new script. It's different than my dancing with Dan. So the dancing block is not there. You can share procedures with other scripts. Anybody know how to share blocks of code with other scripts? We talked about how to do it between sprites on the script. How would you do that? I don't think that works, but I haven't tried it. Yeah. I don't know if anyone's looked at the very bottom of the Scratch screen. What do you see at the bottom of the screen? The very, very bottom of the Scratch screen. Backpack. Yeah, you have a backpack that you can stick code in, and then you can retrieve that code from your backpack and other scripts. So I got a few things I've thrown in there for fun from previous days playing. So the backpack is the way to get chunks of code from one script into another script. Just throw that chunk of code in the backpack, of one script, open up another script, open the backpack and pull that code out. It's kind of cool. All right, so my blocks, we're gonna make a new block. So we're gonna click make a block. And then in make a block, we're gonna make a block called draw flower. And I recommend, like the book, doing camel case, no spaces. Some programming languages are, the style in some languages on procedures is to have a capital first letter when you're defining the procedures. Others is a lowercase. Okay, Scratch here, this guy likes capital for the start of a block name. And this one right here does not have any parameters. We're just gonna make it do stuff. So then I just click OK. And it brings me this red block on the screen that's called define draw flower. Okay, well, how do we draw a flower? Well, this other block here that says when I receive message draw flower, that's how to draw a flower. So I'm just gonna grab that set size stuff and I'm gonna pull it off there. I'm gonna stick it under here. And now, what have I done? What I've done is I've just given a block of code a name, but it's not being used anywhere on the script right now. Okay, so if I try to run this, oh, and somebody pointed out online that if I go to my stage, the code for when the stage is clicked, do shit, that's where the hidden code was to make stuff happen. Okay, I forgot about it. Thank you very much. Miku, good job. All right, back to my sprite here. So then to actually use this, I gotta go grab its usable version and then stick that where I need to apply it. Okay. Does that make this particular code any better? Not really, it's just a slightly different way to set up the code. Okay, but if we wanted to draw flowers in some other instances, before we would have had to redo this whole chunk here. Now I just have a little tag where I can use it anywhere I want. So it's more easily reusable. Okay, let's see what other instructions we have. So on page 75, we just did part 1, which was to open the new file. Part 2 was to make the procedure. Part 3 was to stick that new code in the procedure. And then part 4 was to then apply it. And, oh, okay. Reading ahead to part 4, what they say to do is we don't even need the broadcast message anymore. Okay, so this is one way to do it the way I have here, but I could just go to the when I receive draw here and pull out the part that says broadcast draw flower and wait, and put in the draw flower, and then put in the change by next costume underneath it. So we could just make that replacement there, and then these two blocks aren't necessary anymore. Just going to ditch those. Okay, let's see if there's any other instructions I might have missed here. That looks like all of the directions. All right. So we should be able to run it. Click on the screen. And it's going to behave just like it did before, but without the broadcast message. All right, so in the previous example with procedures, I showed how to put a number input, and I showed how to put labels to go with it. I mentioned that there's this Boolean true false thing we can use. We'll get to that when we do the if then chapter. There's one other thing I didn't get to in there, which is the idea of refreshing. So again, I just want to run this. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to run it. Click on the screen. Okay, so it drew 1 flower, 2 flower, 3 flower, 4 flower, 5 flower, one after the other, right? That, because of this repeat loop right there. All right, so next what we're going to do is we're going to right click on define flower and edit it again. And there is a run without screen refresh option that we have not checked out yet. So let's check that out. So I'm going to click run without screen refresh, and I'm going to choose OK. And then I'm going to run it again. So stop, flag, screen. Did it behave different? Stop, flag, screen. Stop, flag, screen. Anybody notice a difference in behavior? The flowers came up a lot quicker, like almost instantly, all of them. Whereas before, so what the refresh is when Scratch runs a procedure, it runs the procedure, pauses a fraction of a second, and then waits to see what happens next. Like maybe the procedure is going to be called again, which it was in this repeat loop. Okay. So that is with refresh, right? A little pause. Without the refresh, it just jumps to the next thing before the first thing is even done. Okay. It's like this multi-thread thing, they call it in programming. So I'm just going to go back in, see the difference again. I'm going to go edit. I'm going to turn off run without refresh, which turns refresh back on, which is a little pause as it's redrawing the screen. And stop, flag, click. Right, I can definitely see they're going slower this time. One when it's finished, then the next one starts. Okay. So that's the run with and without refresh option in these definitions. Okay. So we just completed part 4 of the reading exercise together by going through pages 75 and 76. On page 77, they talk about the screen refresh thing that I just mentioned. So we're ready to submit this as part of our assignment. So I'm just going to share it. And I'm going to copy the link. And then I'm going to go here. I made a space to answer question 3. And I'm just going to put a temporary answer there. And I'm going to hit enter. That's going to give me a new number 4. And then I'm going to put, here's my flowers 2 script. Here is my flowers 2 script or project, whatever you want to call it. And I want to make a note, like, what's the difference between the original script and my script? Well, my script doesn't use the broadcast meshes. It uses a procedure. So I'm just going to add that in there with the procedure. And then I'm going to highlight the phrase my flowers script. Usually we try not to highlight beginning and ending spaces, but it's hard sometimes. There we go. And I'm going to link that text to the address I copied of my script and apply. And so that way, when my teacher gets it, they just click there and boom, there's the script. Okay. I'm going to put a extra line here. How do you do an extra line again without a number? Shift enter. Yeah, shift enter. Make it a little more readable. So I'm going to do a shift enter after this, and then I'm going to do a regular enter after that. And now I'm ready to work on part 5 of this assignment. All right. Questions on what we just did, making our own procedure or linking a Scratch file in a Google Doc? Okay. So I'm going to wait about a minute, see if anyone needs to catch up. And then we're going to do the checkers, try it out 4.2 assignment from the book. It's actually an example, technically, in the book. And reminder, in these reading assignments, I am not going over every example in the book. That's up to you to do, right? So on your own, you should check out the square procedures on the next page. It's a pretty good example. We're going to do something like that a little later. On page 88, they mention the idea of a parameter versus an argument. I'm going to mention that right now. I've kind of mentioned it earlier. Open board, get my whiteboard here. And let's see, I'm going to use an example from my Dancing Dan script. I'm not there yet. There we go. Okay, so if you're following along in the book, on page 80, they mention parameters versus arguments. And both parameters and arguments, let's make that a little bigger, are like variables from algebra. But instead of having lame names like X and Y, they get cooler names like steps and effect change and things like that. So when I'm defining a procedure, and in the procedure, I use the things like steps and repeat and effect, right? Those oval type blocks within the block there, they're called parameters there. So I have a little note here. The oval shapes are parameters for the procedure, okay? And a parameter, when I think about parameters, my wife gives me a job. Go clean the main floor. What do you mean clean the main floor? What are the parameters of that job? Well, you're going to straighten, and then you're going to vacuum, and then you're going to mop, right? Those are the parameters of my job. Anything else is outside the parameters of my job, right? With scripts, the parameters are usually new numbers, text, or like yes, no, true, false kind of things, okay? And the procedure needs them to do something. When we use the procedure, the numbers we plug in to replace the steps or the effect or the repeat, those number values are called arguments, okay? So when I use it up here, oops, in an applied procedure, the values are called arguments of the procedure. So when we're defining it, they're called parameters. They help define how things are going to happen. And then when we actually use it, because if you define a function, it's useless until you plug it in somewhere. You can't just define a function and walk away. You've done nothing. You have to then say, okay, now use it somewhere, right? Which is this kind of block up here at the top. So when we apply a procedure and we type in numbers for those different things, those numbers are called arguments for the procedure. Not a huge deal if you mix up the idea of a parameter versus an argument. No one's really going to care. Sometimes I misspeak and I say argument when I mean parameter, but they're basically variables that we use to make this stuff happen. Okay. All right, let's do the next thingy. So the next thingy, according to the assignment, is checkers.